I'm already quite tired. So I said I'd be on at 5, so I've come on at 5. I'm just going to change the settings as usual. It might be a bit difficult to get gas masks down and stuff on this particular stream because the room's even messier than it normally is, because I've been sorting some stuff out. And where I've been sorting stuff out, obviously some stuff's sort of a bit more in the way than it normally would be. But yeah, anyway, do a stream now. And I'm just going to get the settings correct, because as I always complain about when I start one of these streams, and the YouTube interface is breaking, which is brilliant. So 1 second. Yeah, as I complain about, the problem with these streams is YouTube doesn't let you save a load of presets on the mobile. So you need to then go onto a PC to get the presets onto the settings you want them on. And then the other issue is that obviously, yeah, you have to mess about doing that. So, and I've always keep moaning about how the live chat doesn't often work properly. Right, so I'm just going to set this to subscribers only, because if you've been on any of the recent ones, you have to be subscribed for 20 minutes. I've had loads of people just keep coming on and spamming. Like every now and then you get a wave where there's like little kids or whatever making a dozen accounts each, will come on and just like spam, like copy and paste. There's slow mode as well I could turn on, that helps. But slow mode isn't great if somebody's asking you legit questions, because sometimes you then need to ask them a question back to help answer their question, and slow mode gets in the way of that. So anyway, so there's 6 people on and already 2 likes, so thank you. I've got a t-shirt I'll wear when I'm next on video or a stream that's kind of channel appropriate, but I didn't put it on today because I haven't got round to laundering it yet or whatever. So yeah, hopefully we get some people on in the chat. But these always get sent out better than when I do a game stream, even though like sometimes people go, oh, I'd like you to stream a game, then they never get the notification, because for whatever reason with YouTube, when it's a vertical stream like this, it sends it out more reliably to people. So again, something just to complain about, but yeah, there you go. So I got some more Alpenflage stuff recently, but I haven't got it in this room handy to show on a video, but I will do. One of them is like a massive Alpenflage like rain poncho thing that looks quite interesting. The other one is just an Alpenflage helmet cover, but that's not necessarily for my Swiss helmets. That's more just that I've got an Alpenflage helmet cover, so I might as well stick it on one of the helmets, because it's, you know, it's one of those quite bulky, just drawstring camo helmet covers, so it probably should work on those things. But yeah, hopefully we get some people in the chat anyway. I've spent most of today waiting in for a parcel, and it was one of those typical things. All right, Shadow Company, now is this the real Shadow Company, or is it somebody pretending to be Shadow Company? I've had one of those annoying parcels where it should have just gone through the door, but Amazon for some reason decided to put the parcel inside a giant box, even though it was quite a small parcel. So couldn't go through the door, even though it would normally fit through the door. And it was one of those ones I didn't want getting soggy sitting out, you know, because it's raining today a bit. So I was basically just constantly waiting for the van to come so I could actually take the parcel in. But yeah, like I said, I've got some stuff to do videos on, but I'll just do those as and when in the week. I'll probably tomorrow try and get the video done on my British Mark IV like microphone special gas mask from World War II that I've shown in the stream before, but I've not done a video on it yet. So I'll probably just do that as a short, because you can't really wear them and do anything with them because of the dangerous old filters on them. But the mask's quite interesting in itself anyway. But yeah, there we go. So hopefully we get some people in the chat. It says there's people on, but not many people talking. But yeah, otherwise, like I said, yeah, just sort of videos on. I'll do some more. I've got some of the more military style MREs to do a video on, because the one I did yesterday is one of the sort of freeze dried type ones. See what the comments on there. Somebody recommending me one called a maple muffin top MRE meal. So I'm just going to search that. Looks quite interesting. So what's that like? It's a weird cakey thing. Although if it's a US one, it's going to be hard to get in the UK. Let me just search it on eBay. Yeah, annoyingly, I don't think anywhere in the UK has those in stock. I'll go to the chat in a second, but that site's in pounds. But what site is this? Because again, there's no point buying one of these if it's from the US and then contact us. Where's this thing set? Oh yeah, they're California, so no point ordering that. I'm not paying a fucking load of import fees for some MREs. Anyway, let me get the chat back up 1 second. Ah, good. It's sent out to people now. So Shizzy or Sizizi, sorry, said hi. What's the mask? What white mask on my wall? That is a Soviet. Is it PDE1 or PTM1? Sorry, PTM1. So Papa Tango Mike 1, and that's a weird Fallout mask. It's also on the poster down there. You might just be able to see it on the bottom of the poster. So it was like way cheaper than the GP5. It's kind of just like slightly filtering cotton, so it's like you're breathing through a load of cotton shirts wrapped together. Again, it's the idea is it stops fallout particles. It would work to a degree, no protection against gas whatsoever, but would protect you from inhaling some radioactive fallout. But compared to a proper gas mask and filter, pretty crap. But I think it's pretty cool, like old weird creepy Cold War stuff like that. All right, Rich. Creepy statue says Bot B1 Battle Droid Pianist. Yeah, it's the East German mannequin. Oh, you got some gas mask P3 pads. What did you get? Like I was saying earlier before people came on, I've got some more Swiss Alpenflage stuff recently, but not anything too interesting. Just more like one really heavy duty rain poncho thing. So kind of would work as an NBC poncho as well, but you know, the main use of it is if you're in torrential like downfall rain, it's better than just a normal raincoat. And an Alpenflage helmet cover, but the helmet cover is basically just not because I wanted an Alpenflage one, even though I did, but you know what I mean? It's just because it would fit on most helmets because it's just a bulky drawstring one. Probably Fritz then, because he's German. Oh, Hans, yes. Hans. Simon says, Simple Simon says the pieman. Give me a pie or I'll bash your head in. They're probably the ones that are basically non-functional, as in they're good for wall hangers, but they basically have no draw weight to them whatsoever. I think I've got the type of one you're on about somewhere. I don't know where it is at the moment. But yeah, you can launch a little dart like bolt that comes with it about 10 yards at most. But yeah, they're more like I wouldn't say a toy because they'd still be dangerous if you shot something sharp out of them. But they're not designed to be proper heavy draw weight ones. They're more to, you know, just look like one, kind of like a film prop sort of one, if you know what I mean. Those type. Oh, shitload of stuff. So yeah, VM40. So Germany that I shouldn't say the name of on the stream because of YouTube. GM54, is that a German Cold War one? MM1, so that one, know what an MM1 is. C3, Canadian C3, and an S10. And the Soviet one, I can't remember the name of that, but yeah, the head injury one. Like, it looks like a GP5 with a huge neck bit around it. But yeah, Shadow Company, but like I said, this isn't a proper, like, even the cheapest pistol crossbow would shoot better than it. But yeah, these things are still pretty cool as a little decorative piece. But yeah, they're one of those basically just like wall hangers, a bit like the wall hanger swords, where it'd be really bad to try and use that as an actual sword. Because, you know, they're not built to that sort of specification. Yeah, they're still good as a decorative piece, don't get me wrong. For decorative stuff, they're pretty good. It's like Dennick's replicas. You obviously can't shoot them. And, like, obviously, if you were somebody who would do the dumb thing of drilling through them and then trying to put gunpowder in, they'd probably frag grenade in your face. But just for relatively okay things that look almost good enough from a distance, you know, if somebody's not looking too closely at all the details, they're pretty good. Like, they're the sort of things where in a film, you know, extras in the background would have them and nobody would be able to tell. But if you had them really up close in really good high detail, they look a bit off. But yeah, I've got something coming, but I don't want to announce what it is unless I've already said on the stream. Like, can't remember if I said that's coming hopefully in a day or two. I don't want to say just in case it's one of those ones that they end up saying when they process the order properly, oh, sorry, we ran out of stock of it. But should be quite interesting. Something I've wanted for years and only just seen one at a reasonable price. Again, one of those things that I should be saving my money, but because I've wanted one for years and I've finally seen one at a price I'd actually pay for one, I thought I'm going to kick myself over and over again if I don't get this. And then, you know, they're always 3 times the price if they're ever in stock anywhere. So I've got something coming that'll be pretty damn cool for a video, but again, I won't say what it is just in case the seller had a load of people try and buy it at once. So although, because I've had that on a few sites, that they process your order and then they have to refund you in a few days' time, where they're like, oh, sorry, we actually ran out of stock. What's a Meshok backpack? I'll Google it. No, I'm not going to spoil it, Rich. Even if somebody guesses it, I'm not going to say. I'll privately PM it you later if you like. Oh, cool. So it's a Swiss, or is it the Soviet one? But one of those sort of just bags you tie up at the top. I was saying about bags, there's a Chinese bag I bought that's really nice. I want to do a video on at some point, like a modern one. But the Chinese are one of the few type of people who are actually making good replicas of old-fashioned kind of military rucksacks. You know, if you can't find the old ones in stock. Caesar, I don't know, not very good me advising you on that, but I'd say move somewhere where the rent or whatever is cheaper. And then so you have more like overhead money for, you know, emergency funds, your interest, stuff like that. Because everybody I know personally, unless you're outright buying, yeah, although living next to less people would be nice, everybody I know that's moved out and then moved to somewhere where the rent was higher has always had to end up moving back with their parents or wherever else because of just the sheer amount of their income they lose just purely on rent. The people I know that have like managed to like rent somewhere and carry on renting somewhere are the people who've like moved to the cheapest place possible. No, I've not looked at this SCP-5K thing. Let me just Google it now, but I can't again Google stuff. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil it, but no, it's not a gas mask at all. Or is SCP-5K the one I've got? Hang on, let me look on my Steam list. Because I thought it was called Containment Breach, but maybe that was a different game. SCP-5K, yeah, I do have that. Okay, yeah. I've streamed that once. I thought it was kind of meh. Again, it's one of those ones if you're playing with friends, it's probably good, but it was quite buggy AI when I played it. Yeah, I haven't seen Mike's ones in a while, Rich, but because like I said, the problem is for me now is because often I'm working on weekends and I'm up early on like Saturday and Sunday. I'm not on for a late stream, but yeah, because this one's like the early version of the Narinko, isn't it? Where it's more like a pure AKM. redone rather than the proper like Norinco 96 or whatever it's called. Yeah, I know Ready or Not. But yeah, I know about his bullpup. I've actually held that when I went over his. Again, it's one of those bullpups which it looks cool, but the ergonomics are fucking horrible on it. Don't get me wrong, I'd also want one as well. But it's like, compared to a Styroorg or whatever, it's one of those ones where they purely just did it because they had the tooling and thought, let's make an AK bullpup without making it user-friendly. It's really cool, don't get me wrong, but you would not want to be using that. It's, you know, one of those ones where just everything feels wrong about loading the mag and trying to charge it and everything else. Because again, AKs just do not translate to bullpups. You know, I think bullpups have to be designed from the ground up to be kind of all right. Like, I really like bullpups, but the problem is with a bullpup rifle design is that because it's different ergonomics to a normal gun, you have to basically design one from the ground up to get it to be user friendly. Whereas if you just get a regular gun like an AR or an AK and go, yeah, let's bullpup it, it just becomes really awkward and horrible. QBZ95, that was the one. But we weren't talking about that. We were on about, Rich literally said it in his thing, Chinese Type 86S or whatever it was, which was a Chinese export AK as a bullpup for the Canadian-American market before America then banned Chinese gun imports. Appreciate assistance of what? Sorry, Alice. If you... Oh, sorry, there was a comment. I missed it. 6-point head harness for a full-face respirator. What is there a particular model you're trying to get it for? Because they're not all compatible with each other. You could potentially, if you were just going to adapt it and stitch it onto something yourself, just buy one of the really cheap Chinese gas masks with a 6-point head harness and move it over. Do I have any of them handy, just to show you what I mean? Right. This is a 5-point one on this mask, but what I was sort of getting at is some of the Chinese masks have a 6-point one, not a 5-point one, like on this MF14. And they have that same kind of style clipping thing. So you could, in theory, you could buy, like, obviously not an MF14. I'm trying to think what would be a good Chinese mask to recommend for doing that, and then just, like, cannibalize it for parts. But again, it depends if you're looking for a specific mask. And again, like I say, this particular Chinese mask does have a 6-head point one with a very similar style thing of just these like clips you can take on and off. But like I was saying, if you need something very specific where you can't kind of bodge it on, you are gonna probably need more specific advice. But again, I'll have to see if it lets your other comments through what you're on about. Yeah, I think paddles, John, again, button releases, I think, are meant to be faster, aren't they? But in general, paddles, you're not going to accidentally drop your mag out. Because, again, I know that the funny thing is when the L85 SA80 was in development, the prototype versions had a proper paddle like the AK and the FAU and everything else. And that was one of the things the designers were forced to change because of the government saying, we don't want it like that, or whatever, or the MOD saying, we don't want it like that. Then they put the button on it, and then the troops hated the button because it was easy to bump it against stuff and then have your mag shoot out the bottom. What about the Groza? Again, the ergonomics still look awful on it, but I've not held a Groza, so I can't really comment, but I still don't think AKs translate well into bullpups. Oh, what do you mean, like trying to hold the mag to not drop it at the same time as reaching up to press the button? Yeah, I'm trying to think what, because like I said, I've mostly only got DX, but I'm sure there's been a couple of guns where I've had issues where, like, the idea is that you reach with, your fingers to do the stuff. Yeah, I've had that. I think it was maybe with some of my blank firing pistols, I can't remember, where some of them have, like, the slide lock and the safety and everything, where you can't easily reach, where you'd have to have a really long thumb to pull the slide release, like slide catch down with your thumb, which is obviously how they've designed some of them. So you end up having to keep shifting your hand on the grip, which obviously isn't how they're meant to be used. The only thing I'd suggest, Alice, like I said, because unless there's a specific mask you're on about, with the Chinese ones, let me just see on AliExpress. But if it was a 6-point thing, I can get an AliExpress link up to a mask that has a cheap 6-point head harness. Right, gas mask, but again, it depends what type of straps you want. So the whatchamacallit, this one, you type 87. Let me just put the link through a thing so it shortens it. 1 second. But if you're, like I said, if you're trying to comment about a specific mask and YouTube's blocking the words where nobody else can see it in the chat, it's not coming through. But for at least a 6.1, if this link works, 1 second, which was the tab I had open, this one. That has a 6-point head harness on you could just take off. And you've got a mask with it if you wanted any other valves or whatever to take off. But again, if you were commenting about a very specific mask that you needed replacement straps for, YouTube's not allowed your comment through. But like when it comes to things like spare S10 straps and things like that, sometimes they're on eBay, but generally people want so much for them. I think you'd probably be better off trying to buy an entire mask for that price and having a spares and repairs mask rather than just buying individual parts. But again, it depends on the mask. And again, there's masks where I wanted replacement parts and I've never found anybody selling them at all. Well, in theory, Caesar, with modern bullpups, supposedly you have a lot of good triggers in them. Apparently, people were saying in the US, and again, I'm not there, that there's an aftermarket AUG trigger, for example, which feels almost as good as a good AR's trigger. But again, I don't know. But again, in theory, I think you could, in theory, like saying, put good triggers in a bullpup. But I know that was one of the issues of a lot of early ones, that the triggers were either like really stiff or like way too high. You know, or they had like the weird connectors in them to connect the trigger to the rest of the action, so they were quite squishy and weird. T62 Shadow Company, T64s are still fairly modern. Not in a sense that they're originally from 1964, but T64s had a lot more upgrades than T62s. So T64s the Soviets were still using alongside T80s and everything else. T62s are like essentially bigger T55s. But yeah, it's not because they're lazy, it's because they've blown up the rest of their tanks. No, I need to watch it, but like I said on another stream, unless somebody's going to offer to give me a lift to one, there's not any cinemas near me anymore. So I'll probably end up just having to watch it online somewhere. Yeah, I get what you mean, John's Life, yeah. But yeah, originally I was going to go with a few people from work that wanted to watch it, but none of them are on about watching it anymore, so I guess they've lost interest in it. Because a lot of the time when I'm at work with people, you have people that go like, oh, let's go out for drinks on a certain night or whatever, and then it always ends up being things that you have to get one normally specifically for a certain mask Caesar, unless you just get an old pair of glasses, take the arms off, and kind of rig them in yourself. Ukraine also had their own T-64s. If I remember right, T-64s originally Kharkov plant, aren't they? Kharkiv plant. So, again, Ukraine would have been the like place they originally manufactured, not Russia. Ukrainian SSR originally. Because most of the good Soviet tanks were from the Kharkiv plant, not actually whatever the tractor plant was in Russia that made tanks. T-34s originally were Kharkiv. That's pretty cool, Rich. But yeah, I was going to say something then. My mind's already going blank. Like I said, I'm quite tired today. I think it's because today I woke up a lot early. So the problem is, whenever I'm off on a weekend, my body clock always wants to wake me up at the time I'd normally get up for work. Well, every vehicle is basically made almost obsolete by FPV drones, unless you have some way of stopping drones. So again, even fairly armoured vehicles can still get hit by a couple of drones in succession and get completely destroyed. So, you know, things with paper thin armour aren't going to be any different than heavy armoured vehicles if the first drone hits them in the tracks and then the rest go into the rear or whatever, or top of the canopy. But yeah, what I was saying about glasses adapters anyway was basically if you get a pair of glasses, take the arms off, so each bit there. With a lot of them, you can just rig then that bit to somehow attach to the inside of the mask, but lots of different masks have different attachment systems. Some have things where there's like a glasses thing where the left and right bit clip in, others have like a bit where there's spikes on that bit of the glasses where they don't push in. Yeah, I think the whole warfare meta is basically going to completely be changed, John, by FPVs, because of the fact that apparently now the majority of kills on both sides in Ukraine are FPV drones, not even artillery anymore. Because of the fact that, you know, FPVs are what, like $500 or less for one FPV with an extended battery on it and like an RPG warhead. And that's good enough to kill most vehicles if it hits the right point. And, you know, if they're running out of battery and they don't see anything better, they just go after infantry with it. So I think drone swarms are just going to become sort of, you know, the kind of new horrifying, like you're saying, warfare meta. Because that's what a lot of the actual proper war channels are all about, is just how scary it's getting, the idea that a fucking cheap drone can just literally zoom in onto somebody and kill them. And that's going to become the, you know, especially as they become more and more autonomous, where they don't even need somebody, you know, actually piloting them, but they have like a massive database of just, you know, like image recognition on them. This is what this nation's tank looks like, you know, from a load of different angles. Because again, people are like, oh no, drones will be useless once there's lots of jammers, but then they're just flying fiber optic drones, and lots of jammers don't really work as well as they're meant to. That, you know, if the jammer's only starting to jam the signal when the drone's already on its like terminal bit of the flight path, you know, having a jammer isn't going to protect you at all. Both sides are using shulkers, but not as much as I'd have expected. But again, it's because the shulker's radar you can't really use in the modern day because it's an analog computer. Yeah, they did that in Spider's Web apparently, and I know they've tried it in a few places, but yeah, the idea is that if it loses its signal, so, you know, the operator can't communicate with it, it just basically picks its own target and goes for it. But yeah, I think that's kind of going to be the weird thing with like the current war meta, is just that, yeah, the idea that you can have all this like kind of Skynet-y type stuff that just, you know, picks its own targets and then goes for it. So yeah, that is again pretty scary to think about, because just the fact that, you know, men might still be being sent into the grinder in a sense, but it's not even somebody directly killing you now. It's just, you know, release swarms of drones. Drones hunt down their own targets. And it's going to definitely end up being more like land-based and sea-based stuff, because like the sea babies, or whatever they call them in Ukraine, are already pretty damn good at ramming into ships and firing AA missiles at things. Yeah, because it turns out Western stuff is way better than old Soviet gear for the most part. And yeah, BMPs are paper thin armor. Same with especially what's the other one? BMDs, is it? Because BTRs also don't have much armor, but I think it's BMDs, like the airdroppable ones, which, you know, literally can be shredded by a 50 cal from the front. Yeah, because obviously you can skeet shoot essentially, can't you? A drone of a shotgun, so therefore they're more useful than a rifle. They're also doing that thing, aren't they, where both sides are producing rifle ammunition, which is essentially shotgun rounds but sized to rifles, where they're shooting out like birdshot from like AKs essentially. Yeah, that's what happened in the Gulf War. Well, not with T-90s, but with T-72s and T-55. So, yeah. But there's that video as well where a T-90 gets its like optics completely wrecked, and it's just spinning its turret around aimlessly because, you know, a Bradley's just used its Bushmaster, just hose down all the optics on the T90. Yeah, exactly. Like I said, it's the ATGM, isn't it, for the most part, which would destroy a T90. But again, like I said, the autocannons on basically any IFE can completely destroy the optics on a tank. Roy said hi. Hello, Roy22. But yeah, because what it seems like I don't know if they've been used that much, but I know both sides have kind of experimented with them. Is having like quite a small little kind of almost like RC thing with a machine gun on the autocannon on it. And the idea, I think, with that is that you have like a little thing that just drives forwards on tank tracks, and then it's just somebody, you know, with a little first-person view of basically a gun turret. And again, no crew or whatever. I suppose you can't clear a jam or something like that. The idea, I guess, is again, you're not wasting a person's life. But yeah, like I said, man-made horrors beyond our comprehension, or whatever it is. Yeah, literally anything that doesn't have a human operator directly in it that just explodes when it hits you is basically what we're learning. Drones that drop grenades, drones that fly into you and explode, drones that drive into you and explode, drones with their own little guns on that shoot at you. Because there's been some of the drones Ukraine's done that look like the FPV drones, but they've got a couple of like, you know, like grenade launchers on them. Either I can't remember if they were like recoilless rifle type ones, you know, like single shot RPGs, or if they were like lighter weight grenade launchers. But you know, where they literally sort of dive and shoot, you know, essentially little rockets at what they're aiming at. No, Trump is what's the name for him? I'm trying to remember. Not Taco. I'm trying to think of the other name for him. The supposed Russian code name for him. Agent, whatever it was. Not Agent Orange, even though that's more appropriate. But yeah, like Trump the other day was going like, oh, we'll see if we can give Ukraine some more Patriots. And then he's apparently completely cancelled all weapons deliveries to Ukraine, even though Congress voted on it. What can't beat Russia in rockets? Sorry, Burp. Do you mean what, just producing rockets and shooting them? Or isn't it most of the time now just Shahed drones Russia's just spamming, I think? Sort of every few days they spam about 400 plus Shaheds, don't they, at Ukrainian cities? But again, that's why Ukraine is trying to deep strike things like oil refineries, you know, like weapons plants, ammo dumps, stuff that's actually important, whereas Russia's just doing the terror bombing thing, which again doesn't win you a war, because you'd have to basically kill every civilian to actually force a surrender, where just impotently blowing up apartment buildings and hospitals just basically alienates you from everybody else. Well, things like grabs and that, do you mean, Burb? But yeah, I know that grads, apparently with that like score thing for FPV operators, I think grads have quite a high score to blow up, you know, compared to infantry and like lightly armored vehicles. I think more than even the SPGs, actually. Although I don't know if Russia really has many SPGs left at this point, because you see lots of pictures of them just with like towed field guns now. But I know they've been buying like the North Korean equivalent of grabs, haven't they, to use grabs? Oh yeah, HIMARS and M2, HIMARS and Mars are basically much better systems. It's just a problem of having enough of them. Which one's the Buck? That sounds very... Right, hi Uncle. Buck sounds very... I should know what Buck is, but I can't think of what it is. Buck Russian. Buck missile system. Which one is it, though? Oh, it's surface to air. Oh yeah, I've seen some of those getting blown up. Oh yeah, because Buck broken. Ha ha ha. Yeah, because but Buck and Strela 1s and Strela 2s and Strela 10s and whatever. A lot more recently, Rich. Like, they started off only giving him helmets, then they started giving him more and more aid, and the current German government actually wants to do proper rearmament rather than, whoever replaced Schultz, is it Merz, is actually seeming to want to properly rearm Germany rather than just talking about it and not doing anything. Yeah, well, obviously, Nicholas, they went into the war with a very different army than they have now because of much of their Soviet stuff just getting mauled and now having to basically adapt to the current realities of the front line. I mean, there was quite a good video I saw regarding the German gear of where they put Erica over the top of it, where there was a Ukrainian in full Fleckton with probably an MG3, one of the MG42 looking MGs, LARPing as a German. Do, 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 do. Played a bit of Enlisted. Like I said, I definitely prefer Enlisted to War Thunder because it doesn't seem as grindy. But the one that people recommended to me that's I quite like is Easy Red 2 because of the fact it's not got any microtransactions in it other than some DLCs. I think at this point, both sides, if they can pull something out of storage somewhere and use it on the front line, they will. Because, like I said, it's certainly not a sign of strength for Russia to be be begging North Korea and Iran for gear. That basically shows how bad the situation is for them. Although the main danger for Russia now is apparently how much their economy is imploding in on itself. I mean, Enlisted is grindy, but it's nowhere near as grindy as War Thunder in terms of how quickly you can get up a tech tree. I think a lot of the Soviet bloc surplus has already been used by both sides. No, I've seen the movie Scum, Caesar, but I think if you're on about playing Scum, you must be on about a very different thing. Because I know the movie Scum is about don't go in the greenhouse. Yeah, well, Putin basically can't back down from it because he's a dead man, essentially. But yeah, basically, like we were saying in another stream or whatever, what's probably going to happen in Russia is Putin is either going to die or eventually get couped by somebody. And then if it's a smart person that comes into power, they'll basically say, can I have all my wealth and assets back if I sign a peace deal in Ukraine, basically? Because if they're not as basically egotistical and as committed as him to this. You know about Scum then, Caesar? Yeah, got a tool or whatever. I'm the daddy now. No, I don't think I've ever played Scum. Most of the survival things. Let me just look up which one it is then, Scum. But is it on Steam? The one that's $39.99. Single player, online PvP, online co-op. But no, I've not played Scum. How does it differ in any interesting way from all the other countless survival games out there with similar? Stalin's Georgian, though. Stalin was a Georgian, not a Russian. Yeah, I heard they were very good, the North Koreans, at hand-to-gland combat. But yes, the North Koreans, apparently went on a very much technology internet binge, didn't they, as soon as they got access to it. But yeah, at least it's not going very well for Iran. But like I said, if you watch a lot of the channels that are very good at like talking very, I didn't make that up, John. I stole it from somebody else that was on about that. But yeah, hand-to-gland combat. But yeah, a lot of the channels that are really good at going into like financial stuff regarding various countries have gone really into how bad it's getting in Russia now. Because apparently, lots more like top Russian officials are having to admit in various ways that, oh, the economy's not in great shape. And apparently a lot of it is just because it's like the runaway train thing of where they've constantly been increasing the price for people to join the army. So they don't have to actually do a proper mobilization, like conscription sort of drive thing. And then other industries then have to pay people more and more to get workers. China isn't, like, China's weird in the sense that China is selling weapons to both sides, while not directly selling weapons because they know that will look bad. So yeah, they're selling stuff to Russia, but they're also trying to stay neutral and just kind of sell shit to both sides. So while China is technically allied with Russia in a way, they're not very much supporting Russia in the sense that they're not being a very good ally in the sense of it's more just, hey, would you like to buy some of our shit, Russia? I don't think you've got a choice. Yeah, dual-use components and that, yeah. But yeah, for China, I think apparently the FSB was apparently really worried. There was a report from about a year ago that got leaked, and apparently all the intelligence people think it's real, not like a made up one. That the Russian FSB is really worried about China trying to start taking bits of Eastern Russia, as in like China will wait for the Russian army to get even more mauled and like Russia to be economically even worse off than it is now. And then they'll just basically do their own special military operation to take Vladivostok or whatever else, in that sort of area of Russia. Because Russia's going to be able to do fuck all about it in that sense. Yeah, well, the giant F-35 Shadow Company, I saw that where they look like fucking alien spaceships in the desert. The ones where they were like 10 times bigger than the real size of an F-35. But yeah, I won't be on too much longer today, just like I said, because annoyingly, normally at work for all the weekends where I've had this weekend off, my body has still wanted to wake up really early, like a 6 a.m. sort of get up, because my body clock is just used to doing that every weekend. So my body's already like, you need to sleep because you've been at work all day, even though I've not been at work all day. But yeah, if I had to put money at the moment on who would win in a fight, the Russians or the Chinese, even though the Chinese don't have really any recent military combat experience, considering they actually have a standing army that hasn't been completely obliterated, I just put it down to China. I wasn't working today, Nicholas, but like I say, the problem is because every other weekend I am working like 10-hour shifts. I've got the problem that, like I said, this weekend where I've actually had it off, my body clock, is not adjusted to it, which is one of the things I really hate when I have days off work sometimes, is my body clock's like, oh, you need to get up at whatever time, even though I've got the day off. So, and I also need to get some dinner because I've not had any tonight. I'll film a video because I'll dig out one of my other MREs and have that in a minute. I think I've got some that aren't proper military ones, but they're exactly the same kind of brown foil pouches with hydrated, meals in them. So for all intents and purposes, they're very similar calorie-wise and, like everything in it and how you heat them up to the military MREs. Because I have had a load of military MREs before, but I don't think I've got many left at the moment, if I have got any. But I've got these ones that are pretty much, other than the fact they're not officially like military branded ones, they are exactly the same thing. The best MRE I've had, I think, out of all the proper MREs was, I can't remember what variant of like curry it was. It was like some sort of Malaysian curry thing. And it was like Like, not a spicy sauce, but also not really mild. And it was potatoes and rice, not just rice, with like chicken and whatever. If that's an American one, ice cream sandwich, sadly you don't really see American MREs in the UK. Because people were recommending me American MREs on another video, but sadly, if you find American MREs in the UK, you have to pay a shitload for them. So there's no point. Yeah, pot noodle works, but like I said, MREs are interesting. And sometimes if MREs are out of date, you can buy them really cheap, which is why I like them, because, you know, you can then sort of see what they're like, but they're out of date, so they're sold cheap. But, you know, by being out of date, if the packaging's intact, they're going to be fine anyway. I've got rice pudding MREs, some military ones. They're quite nice rice pudding MREs. They're very similar to like the rice pudding you can buy in cans, but yeah, I like a lot of the MRE biscuits and like protein bars and that as well, but they're not like the full-on meals. They're just the ones you're designed to snack on throughout the day. But again, my favourite MRE, like out of the non-meal ones, was the cookies and cream protein bar. But that's one of those really annoying ones that everybody must like it because it's always sold out on sites that get them in really quickly. And I think because, like with a lot of MREs, different companies manufacture them for like governments. But sometimes you'll get ones that are made on contract for the UK, like MOD or whatever, but they don't always taste as good as other brands. But you don't know when you're just buying them in bulk online what you're getting. So, but yeah, the cookies and cream ones are pretty nice. They're kind of like Rice Krispies with like, yeah, like saying just cookies and cream kind of protein sort of powder taste to them. But yeah, like I said, the problem, like I said, because regarding stuff like that, I've had sweet and sour chicken and rice ones before, Nicholas. And I've had that sort of similar thing where sometimes I'll get one and I really like the flavour of the sauce, and other times are a bit meh. Like, you know, never awful, but, you know, but there's no way of really knowing when you buy it which, like, food company has made it, you know, on contract. Probably completely depends what was in the MRE, but like I said, I've heard there are some MREs that are really nice, others that, yeah. And again, sometimes it's just a dietary thing, because obviously there's MREs you can buy, like, you know, in the UK and a lot of other places that just are foods that personally, like where I've got colitis, that, you know, I'm intolerant to a lot of stuff in them, so I could eat them and then I'd have the shits, you know, a day later, so I wouldn't bother. I was going off now, Hype, but I'll stay on a few more minutes if you're on, but we were on about MREs at the moment. And then you get the weird MREs like the chocolate ones, which are military chocolate, which is chocolate that's designed not to melt in the desert or like the jungle or whatever, which isn't particularly not nice, but it's just weird. So if you give it to somebody, they'll know immediately it's not real chocolate. Well, the ones we get in the UK are called like Choco-Block rations, and they're like a 3x3 sort of like, you know, square piece of chocolate, like, so you get 9 little blocks of chocolate. But I think it's because they don't use actual butter, but they use some sort of like coconut fat or something like that. And again, like I said, they're not nice, it's just they're weird because, yes, they have got cocoa in them and everything, but obviously where nearly all like chocolate you'd buy on a regular market are made of butter mixed with like cocoa and all that. These have got different things in so they don't melt in hot temperatures. They're just weird. Spaghetti, because spaghetti and all that has a lot of wheat type stuff in it, I personally avoid those. Because like I said, it's kind of, I'm playing Russian roulette when I eat like pastry type things, how it's going to go with my stomach. The chocolate pudding ones, Nicholas, are pretty good, but I don't think I have any of those, sadly, anymore. Because you could get the chocolate brownie ones, the ones that were like chocolate sponge cake with like quite strong chocolate sauce, and those are nice. I think they're just called chocolate pudding or something like that, but Mamma mia! You have genocided the spaghetti. What are you doing to my pizza? But no, yeah. I've not tried any of the things, but like I said, with Italian food, I have to be quite careful just because if it's got way too much wheat in, like too high in gluten, like I'm probably a bit gluten intolerant, but not like allergic to gluten or whatever. So it's one of those things that sometimes I can eat it and I'm fine. Other times I'll be on the toilet non-stop the next day, so I just avoid it. But yeah, like I say, a lot of the curry MREs I generally like because they've got a lot of like watery liquid in them, so they're good in terms of rehydrating you a bit compared to like dry food. I always like stuff that has that baby food kind of texture. Right? It's just comforting to me when you're eating something that is literally slop. I actually like that. Same reason I like pork faggots. And if YouTube's watching, I am not being homophobic. In the UK, we have a type of food with that name. But those are nice because you can mush them up and then it's just like gravy and like ground up liver and everything. And I like that. But yeah, like I was saying, like the problem for me is, I think it's just a colitis thing that there's a lot of foods that, like, as far as I know, I'm not allergic to anything, but I obviously have intolerances to certain foods. So yeah, that's the problem. Is a lot of the time there's foods that I just know if I eat it, it's a gamble how my stomach will be the next day. Yeah, it is. So if you say you're going to smoke a fag in the UK, it's a very different meaning to somebody in America, where that would be a hate crime, I imagine. But I ought to be probably careful about saying too many words like that on YouTube in case the auto censor bot strikes me down for hate speech because it doesn't know at all what I'm on about. But yeah, like I said, there's been lots, but like I said, the one I really liked, like I was saying, is that sort of curry one that was like a mix of potato and rice. That was just really nice. Because again, it was one of those sauces that wasn't too spicy, so anybody with like a weak stomach wouldn't, get upset by it. And obviously, with MREs, you don't really want something that's spicy because of the fact, if you're rationing your water out, you don't want to be drinking too much water if it, irritates your throat a bit or your mouth. But it still wasn't like, one of those plain flavorless curry MREs. I can't remember. I think it might just been called like Malaysian potato curry or something like that. I can't remember. I had it years ago, and I had a few packets, but that was genuinely a really nice one. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, because I have like food intolerances, I have to be quite careful with a lot of like this. Like generally, my rule is if I'm going to go out and have like a meal with friends that might be a bit dangerous, I'm not doing it on a day before I'm at work. I can do it like 2 days before I'm at work, but and then I have to have this sort of shit, Loratax, whatever it is, loperamide hydrochloride, which is your best friend if you've got colitis. Intolerant to chocolate. My mum's intolerant to chocolate, which must suck. I'm assuming that's done on purpose, is it? Just because like you're saying, you don't want people to be getting really thirsty from spicy food or getting shits in the field. Because like I said, I know some countries do spicy MREs, but it always seems a bit of a weird thing to me. But so like I said, most of the UK MREs I've tried that are like ones that would normally be something spicy as a civilian equivalent food are a lot more toned down for an MRE. But I have got that one. It'll be one of the ones I do a video on eventually. But like I said, it's that civilian company that aren't military MREs that I was on about earlier, but they're like the exact same like size pouches, with very similar calorie type things. And one of theirs they did was surprisingly spicy, but like I was saying, the civilian equivalents, like the actual proper military equivalents weren't as spicy, but anyway, like I said, I better go in a minute because, like I said, I haven't had dinner yet. I need to film that video when I do my dinner, and like I said, unfortunately, quite tired today just because of the fact that, like I said, annoyingly, even though I could have got up later today, my body clock was like, no, it's a work day, you need to get up, even though I had it booked off work. So at that point, I was like, there's no point in trying to get extra sleep because my body's awake. So, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, and naval MREs have always been hardtack, if you like. Because yeah, hardtack is just one of those things traditionally they could make that was preserved for ages. Again, I've got a couple of brands that I've not got around to doing it on yet because I don't want to open them until I'm ready to actually eat them. Of the other like survival biscuit things, which is very similar to hardtack, those sort of biscuits that are designed not to ever make you thirsty, because you know, the idea is that you might be stranded somewhere far from water. So if you're rationing your water, then designed not to make you thirsty. But like, because I've done the ones on the lifeboat biscuits, but they're like similar other biscuits to that, you know, like very small vacuum packed little biscuits that are designed to be very high in calories for something that doesn't weigh very much. It's weevils, isn't it, mostly, rather than rats? That's why you have like cats on ships or terriers to eat the rats. But yeah, the lesser of two weevils, if you've ever seen Master and Commander. If you've not seen Master and Commander, why the fuck haven't you watched Master and Commander? But yes, hardtack. And again, that why did the Americans call British sailors limeys? Because they ate limes like oranges to avoid scurvy. So if you weren't eating a diet of fucking limes and oranges and things like that, you were fucking stupid, and lemons, because at the time it was one of the best ways as a sailor not to get fucking scurvy. But you know, that was one of those weird insults. Because again, it's like some insults I can kind of understand for various countries, but yeah, limey is always a fucking weird one to me, because it's like, oh, you've got a diet that's actually high in vitamins. Fuck you. Because again, like the better insult for Brits is Poms, that Australians call us, prisoner of His Majesty or Her Majesty, Pom or Pommy. But yeah, limey is one of the ones I've never really got, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, oh, you're eating something that means you're actually not as likely to get scurvy. I'll use that as an insult. I have no idea what that is. Pegida. Oh, hi, Uncle. Anyway, like I said, I better be off. Right. So, because I'm going to cook some food in a minute, I'll heat up one of those MREs and do a video on it. So I will do a video on whatever is the first type of one I dig out of my box of MREs. I think because those ones are a lot smaller than that freeze-dried one I showed off yesterday, I'll probably cook 2 packets at once. But yeah, it's just going to be a case of me popping it in the air fryer for a few minutes. Because one of the things I will show in the video that I don't like about some civilian brands of MREs that imitate the military ones, the foil packets aren't as strong. So when you heat them up and the stuff expands inside, it can actually sometimes rupture the packet and leak out. So that's one of the things that is definitely not as good about some of those civilian MREs as the proper military ones. They put cheaper foil packets around them. So you have to be like quite vigilant as you heat them up, that, you know, like when the gases expand inside from the heat, it doesn't rupture the packet. Like, you can eat them cold anyway, and like so say there's no danger when you heat them up of underheating them, but it's just one of those things that's a bit annoying, that, you know, you can't just stick them in the oven or like over a fire like you can with a standard MRE and then like not worry about it, because it's not really going to burn or whatever. It's just going to maybe boil and lose some of its taste. These will actually split open because they're like thinner, cheaper foil. And sadly with MREs, because they're foil, you can't stick them in the microwave. It'd be a bad idea to do that. Oh, well, fuck them then, though. Hi, Uncle. But no, I've never heard of them before. But then again, I'm not really into German politics, strangely enough, because I'm not in Germany. Right, anyway, have a good evening, everybody. And I'm going to go find where that... where those MREs are. I think I know where they're stored, because I'm going to be annoyed if I can't find them. Because, like I said, it's one of those things where I had a load in one place, and I think they've been moved recently just to make space for other stuff, but I think I know where they've been put. Anyway, have a good day, everybody, evening, whatever. See you hopefully tomorrow.